I recently had to experience something that scarred me for life. But what I did after was even crazier. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Mark Whitaker and I met when ambition still smelled like fresh paint and coffee grounds. He dazzled me with that six-figure grin I mistook for safety. 13 years later, his smile had calcified into a smirk that tore holes in my confidence. One cloudless morning, he marched my last moving box into the garage, nudged it with his foot, and said my voice rang clearer when muffled by drywall. That was the moment my marriage stopped being a partnership and became a zoning restriction. He got the elegant rooms upstairs. I got the oil stains downstairs. I held my tongue because rage spoken too early is just noise. Instead, I traced the slick mark an old sedan had left on the concrete and remembered sanding birdhouses beside my dad. Back then, the air tasted of cedar and possibility. Now it tasted like exhaust and humiliation, but possibility still whispered under the fumes. Dad used to say, "Give a woman 4 walls and she'll build a kingdom." Standing amid discarded paint cans, I decided to build something else entirely. Mark installed a smart camera to protect the tools. The lens, of course, faced me. Each time I hauled a thrift store chair into view, the little red light blinked like a judgmental eye. At dinner, he'd brag to friends that my furniture flipping kept me busy and quiet. Their laughter made my fork feel heavier than the steak. I responded with a smile so tight my cheeks ached. No one noticed because my silence was always the joke. Humiliation metastasizes when you pretend it doesn't hurt. One afternoon, I refinished a walnut coffee table until the grain glowed like caramel. I lugged it upstairs to show Mark a potential $800 sale. He blocked the hallway, arms folded. Furniture, he said, belonged downstairs. Clients expected minimalism, not flea market clutter. My throat burned, but I swallowed the heat. On the way back to the garage, the table slipped and scraped my shin. A thin line of blood bloomed, tiny, but it felt like a contract signed in flesh. The man would never see my worth. That night, I rummaged through a plastic bin marked taxes and found the refinance packet we'd handled 6 months earlier. Mark had been too busy to sign the updated deed. Scrawled across the top in heavy ink, sole owner, Lynn Whitaker. My pulse drummed. While he demoted me to a basement annex, the mortgage broker had handed me the kingdom. I didn't rush. Revenge served cold isn't a dish, it's a 7-course meal. First, I called Angela Little, my college roommate, now an attorney with an appetite for poetic justice. We met at a diner where the coffee tasted like burnt hope. Angela flipped through the deed, raised an eyebrow, and grinned. "He parked you in a garage you own," she said, voice low and delighted. Our plan emerged over pie: discreet appraisal, secret listing, 30-day closing. If Mark objected, we'd wield a restraining order like a velvet-wrapped hammer. Days rolled by with the stealth of a cat. While Mark traveled for sales pitches, real estate agents tiptoed through the house. I staged every room with my refurbished pieces, irony polished to a shine. Buyers loved the cozy warmth Mark had labeled clutter. The highest offer came from a retired couple ready to pay cash and close fast. I signed papers with a steady hand, imagining the garage camera blinking furiously at nothing. Then life, mischievous as ever, dealt its own card. 2 days before the closing, Mark came home early, shoulders sagging. His company had downsized, severance paperwork spilled from his briefcase. He muttered about refinancing, pulling equity, finding a cushion until he landed something new. He didn't know the cushion was already sold. Guilt fluttered at the edge of my resolve. I lay awake, listening to the house breathe around us. Marriage vows aren't garage-specific, my conscience whispered. But memory answered louder. Mark's lip curling as he called my business a hobby that needed hiding. The ache in my shin pulsed like a metronome, keeping time with my certainty. Empathy is a luxury best extended to those who return it. The sale day arrived on a breathless breeze that rattled the shutters. Mark walked into the living room, expecting comfort, and found strange men measuring windows. His confusion melted into anger. "Why are people in my house?" he barked. I handed him an envelope containing finalized documents and a single silver key. He read, stumbled, read again. The deed's language was unyielding. Sole ownership, voluntary relinquishment, vacate immediately. His gaze flicked to the strangers, to me, to the open front door that suddenly felt like a drawbridge. He whispered my name as though it were a plea, but years of belittlement had insulated me. I pointed toward the driveway. "Plenty of room in the garage," I said. Pride trapped him where rage might have lunged. An audience of new owners and a uniformed officer parked discreetly outside kept his outburst caged. He collected a duffel bag and stepped onto the porch. The sun hovered low, coloring everything gold, except Mark, who looked smaller than I'd ever seen. I set Dad's old craftsman hammer beside the welcome mat, a totem of labor reclaimed. Mark stared at it, uncomprehending, then at the house glowing behind me. Angela arrived, the Jeep's engine purring like approval. As I slid into the passenger seat, Mark called after me, voice raw. I didn't turn. Some goodbyes should remain silhouettes in the rearview mirror. We pulled away, tires crunching over gravel that used to be ours. My heart was lighter than air, yet anchored by resolve, an impossible physics I could finally feel. In the weeks that followed, rumors of his public eviction rippled through his industry. Job offers evaporated. Friends avoided him, wary of the drama that clung like static. Meanwhile, I rented a sunlit studio downtown. The garage tools came with me, no camera required. Each finished piece sold faster than I could list it. Freedom smells a lot like fresh-cut pine. 30 years hadn't changed that. One evening, I stood at my workshop window, dusk painting the sky violet. The hammer sat on a shelf, its wooden handle exactly where Dad's palm had smoothed it decades ago. I traced the worn curve and felt the universe settle. Some symbols aren't just objects. They're punctuation marks at the end of long, brutal sentences. I sent Mark a final certified letter, attaching a cashier's check for half the sale profit minus legal fees. Technically, he wasn't entitled to a cent, but closure costs money too, and I wanted no debt, financial or emotional. He never cashed it. Pride can be pricier than real estate. Now I tell this story the way women share scar stories at happy hour, half wince, half triumph. There's always a moment when someone asks why I didn't simply leave. I laugh softly. Leaving would have let him keep the house, the narrative, the power. Selling it while he watched was the antidote to every shove into silence. So here's my takeaway. Never chain a woman who owns the gate.